So I finally saw K-pop Demon Hunters today. If you're wondering why I'm sitting in my car in the parking lot of a movie theater as opposed to sitting at home because it was originally released on Netflix, that's because the week that this video goes up, there was a 2-day limited theatrical showing where it was basically a sing-along screening of the films where during the film's musical numbers you had subtitles showing the lyrics. And honestly, I didn't find that too distracting in the slightest. I just kind of phased them out like my brain always does. But yeah, plus it also helps that the local theater chain Megaplex was selling the tickets for only $5, so not having to break the bank to see a movie is always nice. Holy location change, Batman! Unfortunately, while I was trying to record that review, my phone decided to overheat and not let me record any further until it had cooled down. I guess that's what happens when you try to record a review in your car when it's 90 degrees outside. Anyway, when it comes to K-pop Demon Hunters, unfortunately, there was one question I had in my mind going into it, and I really don't like going into a movie with this question in mind, because it's one of those things where when a film gets praised online, when a lot of people are really hyping it up, it puts you in this kind of mindset of, okay, show me that you're worth the hype. And I've had experiences where when I go into watching a movie with that kind of mindset, I tend to end up disappointed. However, K-pop Demon Hunters is probably one of the few times where I will say it lives up to the hype and the positive word of mouth it's been getting online. The only other film I've seen recently that has also earned that accolade is Sinners. And I guess it goes to show that sometimes the power of word of mouth will do a much better job than, well, the usual social media discord surrounding films. So yes, K-pop Demon Hunters does live up to the hype, and I think a large part of the reason why it does live up to the hype comes down to two key words: passion and sincerity. When it comes to passion, when you look at the overall design and even just the overall story and presentation, you can tell the people working on this film had a deep appreciation and love for K-pop and Korean culture as a whole, and you can tell that they were really wanting to make sure that they were presenting it in a way that was authentic and kind of showed, hey, here's why we think this is awesome, and wanted it to be true to what the culture actually is, as opposed to Orientalist depictions we may have gotten if this film was being developed a good 10 or so years ago. And so that passion comes across with every second of this film. You can tell the people working on this film really enjoyed working on this film. And that even comes across with the character animation and the character design, because one thing that I really, really love about the animation here is that it breaks away from a pet peeve I've had with a lot of 3D animated movies, and even just certain animated movies produced in the modern era, where they're afraid of having the characters appear ugly. I mean, look at any Disney film released within the past decade, and you will know what I'm talking about, where if you see a character even showing some extreme emotions, it's like, oh, well, we have to keep it on model and make it look like an action figure and not actually show emotions. Whereas, to be honest, with Mira, Rumi, and Zoe, there are times where their facial expressions, they literally look like gremlins, and I love it, because it's like, hey, here's a character with actual emotions, with an actual personality that we can actually convey visually that isn't being constrained by the fact that we have to keep them on model for the sake of merchandising. And that goes into my second point about sincerity. Firstly, it's nice to see a movie musical that actually embraces the fact that it's a movie musical and isn't ashamed about it. That's a pet peeve of mine with a lot of Hollywood movies as of late, where they are a musical, but then you have a bunch of marketing execs who are like, oh, well, we have to hide the fact that it's a musical, or we have to put in random dialogue that's like, isn't it weird how they're breaking into song? This film, none of that. It knows what it wants to be, it embraces it, and that is why it works. On top of that, when it comes to the story that it's telling, not only does it have that passion, but it's also sincere in its storytelling. There's no eye-rolling, there's no self-referential humor. It's a case of, yeah, the concept is right in the title. K-pop Demon Hunters. You know what you're walking into when you're watching this movie, so we're not going to tap dance around it. And so it embraces that, and as a result, you're given a very sincere, very human, very universal story. Even as someone who isn't as familiar with Korean culture, who isn't as familiar with K-pop, I still found the story to be very engaging and very relatable, with a major pointed critique. Now, some people may interpret one of the central themes as being a critique on Korean society, or even just the Korean entertainment industry. Some people may see it as a critique on society as a whole. And I like that this film has that layer to it where you can interpret the central theme to be like, is it commenting on this, or this, or this, or is it commenting on all of it at once, because it touches on a deeper rooted problem, and that deeper rooted problem is the notion that we have to hide our flaws or hide our anxieties and put on a brave face to the world. But it does this in a way where it doesn't moralize to the audience. It doesn't have the characters suddenly stop and like, see, here's the lesson of the movie. It actually shows you that theme. It shows you that lesson through the character arcs that we see. And it's not limited to just one or two characters. Each of the three main heroines go through this version of this arc where they have to come to terms with the fact that they've been having to run away from or hide parts of who they are rather than actually acknowledging their insecurities and sharing them with one another. And I love that. I love when a film is earnest in its storytelling, but does it in a way that it feels organic, that it feels like an extension of the story, rather than something that has to be explained to the audience. It shows it. It doesn't tell it. And I love it. As for the music itself, as someone with little to no familiarity with K-pop, I mean, I may have heard like a Super Junior song way back when, but as someone with like no familiarity who is very much out of touch with modern music, that's a whole separate rant for another day. I thought the music was really good. Even as someone who isn't really into pop, I can see why the music is charting on the Billboard charts, despite the band being fictional, because it's well crafted, well executed, and it hits that nice emotional undercurrent that I feel has been listening with a lot of modern music. Again, that says more about me, and I'm sure there's probably a bunch of artists that I'm sure people could recommend to me that do tap into that emotional undercurrent, but I feel that that's probably more of an indictment to the music business side of the music industry more than anything. But anyway, the music, it's really good. I can see why they did a sing-along event. I'm nowhere confident enough to actually be singing along with it, but I'm probably going to track down these songs through various means to listen to them on my own after the fact, because it is that good. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on K-pop Demon Hunters, at least the most organized that I can. I've tried recording this review at least 5 or 6 times at this point, probably because I'm still recovering from a broken toe, and talking seems to be one of the few ways I can keep myself from going insane. Anyway, I'm sure there are probably people who have already seen K-pop Demon Hunters who will probably either agree with me, disagree with me, or may want to point out certain things that I maybe didn't notice when I saw it. Let me know in the comments below, but until then, I will see you next time when I'm next able to see a movie.